One is, even though we agreed on an additional class today, we are not in a position to do it because there are parallel IABF classes happening. So I couldn't get a time slot to do it. As a result, I will have to have it on a different date, which I will tell you today. And also, like, I couldn't make this tute on the financial ratios. So I will somehow get it uploaded to the portal on Tuesday. That is coming Tuesday. Along with that, I am planning to have 2 more handouts, which you might have to go through. And in addition to that, I'm told that the next week, the whole of next week will be holiday for IBSL. So there won't be any classes on next Saturday and Sunday. That is on the 17th and 18th. And then we will come back on 25th. That is the normal Sunday class. But what I'm planning to have is on the 24th from 1 to 3:30. I have a time slot. I have been given a time slot. So I'm planning to start on next Saturday. That is on 24th. Okay, next Saturday. Just make a note of it. Saturday, 24th, we will have a session from 1 to 3:30. And then the Sunday, the usual class. That is from 8. Okay, so this is what our plan is. During which time you will have almost like a break of 2 weeks, starting from today onwards. So what I would prefer you is, I'm going to, as I told you, I will definitely make sure that the financial ratios tute is uploaded. And then I also would like to have 2 more handouts. One is especially on statement of cash flows. Right? Statement of cash flows. So which you all must go through. Like, I don't want to go into the details. You didn't know to go to details, but just go through for your the theory part. Just go through and read through them, because what I will do is I will start statement of cash flow on 24th. Right? That is one. Then the second part would be the regulations to banks. That is another important area that you need to go through. So the regulations to banks is basically a theory component, which you will have to read through and understand, because there is not much that you can look into it. It's all theory. So it's, in other words, it's all the compliance requirements that you need to know. So I would prefer you go through that also by the time we do exam. And we will start off with statement of cash flows on 24th. That is the plan that we have. Okay. Hope that will be okay with you all. And are there any questions that you want to clarify with regard to this arrangement? And most likely, we may have to complete this module. So maybe I might have 1 or 2 classes in May, and then we will finish it off. But for the time being, we need to have these 24th and 25th classes before we move on further. Okay. Okay. We are going to go through the September 2019 question number 3. You can see.
Yes, sir.
Right. So question number 3, which is on financial instruments. The new Sri Lanka Accounting Standard SLFRS 9 financial instruments is effective for accounting periods beginning on or after 1/1/2018. Now, what is important here is, please look at how they write the name of the accounting standard. That is very important. Even at the class I told you, but just look at it. This is what has come in the question paper itself. So when you are writing a name of an accounting standard, now if they ask like, what is the standard, accounting standard that governs the treatment for property, plant and equipment? So when they ask a question like that, you are supposed to write the name of the standard. So how you write the name of the standard? You have to start with saying Sri Lanka Accounting Standard and then the name of the standard, that is SLFRS 9 or LKS 16, and then you have to put a colon and then you write the name. But you don't need to put this double quotation as shown in the question, that they need to that they have shown it just to make it more prominent, right? So what is the first question? State 2 subsequent measurement approaches applicable for financial liabilities under SLFRS 9. So they are talking about financial liabilities. Now you know that financial instruments takes 2 forms, that is financial assets and financial liabilities, and of course there is equity also. Now these financial assets and financial liabilities are measured at fair value, that is at inception. Initially they are measured at fair value. But there are instances where you might also have financial assets or liabilities that are measured at amortized cost as well. But the question here they are asking is, state 2 subsequent measurement approaches applicable for financial liabilities. So whether it is financial assets or financial liabilities, you know that there are only 2 subsequent measurement approaches. Now the question says state 2 subsequent measurement approaches, but you should remember that there are only 2 measurement approaches available in the standard. There are no much that you can write only 2. No, there are only 2. So what are the 2? Fair value and amortized cost. Fair value and amortized cost. Right? Hope you all got it. Then the second part, in terms of SLFRS 9, debt instruments that meet the 2 types of tests. Now they are talking about debt instrument. Debt instrument means it could be a debenture, it could be a bond, or it could be a commercial paper. There are so much of instruments available in the market. So if you have, or if you take a debt instrument, they are asking that meets the 2 types of tests. Sorry. So you see, the questions are very straightforward. The first part of the question was to test your knowledge on whether you know the 2 subsequent measurement approaches. So obviously when you write those 2, you get 5 marks. Now the second part, where it also asks about the 2 tests. Again, you will get 5 marks to write the 2 tests. What are the 2 tests? What are the 2 tests?
Business model test and cash flow insecurity test.
Very good. One is the business model test. One is the business model test. And the second one is where we call it as SPPI test. SPPI test, or you can call it as contractual cash flow characteristic test. One of the two. For simplicity, you can say SPPI test. Remember that, because even if the words that are required to say that contractual cash flow characteristic test, you can simply say SPPI test. That will give you marks. But if you are required to write what is SPPI test, then of course you should know what does SPPI stands for. What is that? What is SPPI?
Solely payment of principal and interest.
Very good. Solely payment of principal and interest. So these are the things that you need to remember. Like, it's not a matter of memorizing. I don't want you all to memorize anything. Just remember conceptually what it is. So we were talking about a business model test. Now, what does the business model test says? What is your intention with regard to a financial instrument? So I explained it in terms of a fixed deposit. Whether if I put a fixed deposit today, should I wait till the maturity date comes? That is an obvious question. If we go and put a fixed deposit, we obviously want to wait till the maturity date comes. Why? Then only we get the full interest applicable on the instrument. So what do you mean by that in terms of SLFRS 9? If you wait for that long, what do you call it? Yes? When you have a financial instrument and if you wait till it's...
Principal plus interest, sir?
No. I'm asking, like, what do you call, how do you call it when you wait till the maturity comes? If you wait till the maturity comes, how do you call it in terms of a business model? We call it as hold to collect. Can you remember? Hold to collect, because I have invested today and I am waiting till its maturity to collect the principal and interest. Yes, someone gave me the answer principal and interest, but what is the rationale? The rationale behind that is where I am waiting to hold, or in other words, I am holding to collect the contractual cash flow. What is the contractual cash flow? That is the principal and interest. Now, conversely, if I want to give up at halfway through, I don't want to wait till its maturity holding it. What is the next business model option available to me? What is the next business model? Hold to collect and sell. Hold to collect and sell. I think all of you have forgotten, is it? Please do revise. What are the two business model tests available? One is hold to collect, the other one is hold to collect and sell. So these are the factors that are going to determine whether your investment is fair value through P&L or fair value through OCI or amortized cost. Can you remember those?
Yes, sir.
Right. So please do revise, because if you don't revise, then you will end up having difficulties in the examination to understand. So I hope everybody should revise with this break that you are going to have within the next 2 weeks. And appreciate if you can go through all what we have done so far, because that will help you to understand how the questions will be in the examination. Right. So what is the answer here? The business model test and the cash flow characteristic test. As I told you, you can also say SPPI test. Third part of the question. As per the following accounting balance extracted from the books of Happy Bank PLC, answer the questions 3 to 4. So that means you have almost done 50% of the question, where it requires only to write 4 simple answers, which will give you 10 marks. You see, the importance of knowing the theory is very crucial. Why? You can easily score the marks without even doing any sums, that is calculations. Nothing is required, right? So don't think that accounting is always working with numbers, remembering methods. No. Even with the theory, you can play the game. Okay? So you have to be very careful. Where it will be very important is the way you tackle with question number 1. Because question number 1, mostly about 15 to 18 marks would be on numbers. Maybe there will be a small question just to cover up 2 marks on a theory part. Even that has come on a mathematical aspect. But there are other areas where you can easily score with the theoretical knowledge. So let's look at the part 3 and 4. They are giving you a table. So just look at it. Have a look at this table. They are talking about 2 dates, as at 31/3/2018, as at 31/3/2019. What can you say about these 2 dates? When you look at these dates, what can you say about it?
Financial year.
Very good. Those are the 2 dates, indicative dates for the financial year end for this company. Okay. So when you have a question like this, you have to be very careful about what this information is. Sometimes there would be irrelevant information as well. But you need to strike on what are the important information that you have, right? So in order to justify this, whether we have made the right judgment, saying that 31st March is the financial year end, let's go into the table. On the left side, you will see, they say, debt instruments measured at fair value through other comprehensive income. So you know what is this? FVOCI, which means these financial instruments are subject to fair valuation, right? Now, why I am going into detail is to make you understand how do I analyze a question. Okay. So when you read through this, you have to recall everything that you have learned. Even the first 2 parts of the question also will help you. Right. Now, when they say debt instrument measured at fair value through other comprehensive income. So here I have an instrument which is basically measured at fair value through other comprehensive income. What does it mean? Any resulting fair value gain or loss from the remeasurement of this instrument will go through the other comprehensive income. It doesn't go to the P&L. So it will go to the other comprehensive income, and from there it goes into the equity statement. Now, why I am stressing this point is, even in your examination, question number 1 might have this kind of an information. So you should be aware. Later on today we will do a question, so you will know. When I look at this type of an adjustment, where do I go and adjust in the financial statement? That is very important, because this is where the candidates go wrong. Sometimes instead of going and adjusting it in the equity, they go and adjust it in the P&L. So that is a problem. So you should be very clear with the adjustment that is given and how to adjust with it. Okay, right. So read through the remaining part also. They say number of debt instruments. Within brackets, they say no purchases or sales from 1/4/2018 to 31/3/2019. Now, what are they trying to say here? Earlier, we said the 31st March is the financial year. But now look at this. There is an indication for us. Yes. The financial year of this company runs through from 1st of April 2018 to 31st March 2019. You see? And during this period, they say, whatever the number of debentures that you had in the beginning of the year, that is 1000 debentures, remains as it is at the end of the year also. At the end of the year also. Right? Just give me a few seconds. Okay. So going further, they say the cost per debt instrument is 150 rupees. So whatever that you have incurred as the cost to buy this instrument is 150 rupees. 150 rupees. But they also say the fair value per debt instrument. There was an error, that typing error. That's why I corrected it. The fair value per debt instrument is 100 as at 31st March 2018, and it is 200 as at 31st March 2019. Okay. Now, what does this give you? This piece of information, what does it mean to you? The fair value being 100 and again 200. What does it mean? Yes. What is the piece of information that you can get when you read the fair value per debt instrument to be 100 as at 31st March and 200 as at 31st March 2019? Which means this particular instrument is either it is getting traded. Now, if this debenture is getting traded in the stock exchange, then there has to be price fluctuations. So that is why there is a change in the prices. Or even without that, if the judgment of the fair value of the instrument also will be there, but in normal terms, this means that this particular instrument is subject to market value changes. Okay, so you have to remember that piece of information. And then the second part in the table where they say loans and advances measured at amortized cost, and they also say under stage 1 for impairment. So can you recall the stages? How many stages are there for the impairment? How many stages are there?
3.
There are 3 stages. So stage 1, 2 and 3. So what they are saying is this particular loan and advances that are captured in this company are subject to stage 1 impairment. Stage 1 impairment, which means all their loans are either performing or with a days past due of within 30 days, right? All these pieces of information should be clear to you all, right? So they're talking about 2 things. They have given you the loan amount, which is the amortized cost, principal plus interest or capital plus interest. So as at 31st March 2018, they say it's 1 million, and as at March 2019, it is 1.250. And they also give you 2 numbers. Can you recall these 2? Probability of default and loss given default. The last chapter, last slide that we did, I told you what is the proper probability of this loan going into non-performing or getting defaulted. So even though you have 1 million of amortized cost loan, it's only 3% that can go into the non-performing. But the same probability has gone up to 4% in 31st March 2019. Okay. Then the second part is loss given default. Now, as at March 2018, the company was thinking that their loss given default is 15%. What does this mean? What does this mean? Anyone? I explained all this. When you have loss given default as 15% means, what does it mean? Yes? That is, if you have given a loan of 100 rupees, what you will be recovering from that loan is only 85. The balance 15 will be a loss to you. Can you remember? I think everybody have gone silent. Now today you have to do a little bit of talking because we are doing a past paper. This is why I wanted you all to revise. Repeatedly I was telling you all, please do revise. Okay? So when you say loss given default means it is a percentage, what does it give you? The amount that the company is expecting to recover, or the amount that the company is going to incur a loss. So what we look at here is the amount that they are going to incur as a loss. So in 2018, they had a number of 15%, which means they have been recovering 85%. But in 2019, when they look at their calculation, it shows only 12%. What does it mean? Which means they were improved. They have improved because earlier they were recovering only 85 rupees. Now they have gone up to recover 88 rupees. Did you all understand that? Probability of default
Yes,
going
sir.
up. Probability of default going up means it's not good for the company. Why? More and more customers are now trying to default. But loss given default coming down means it is good for the company. Why? The company is doing more recoveries. The staff is more efficient, so they are doing more recoveries from whatever that has gone into bad. They are recovering majority of those. So you have to clearly understand the difference, probability of default and loss given default. Right. Let's look at the question. Calculate the fair value gain or loss on debt instruments as at 31st March 2019 and write the relevant journal entries to record such gain. So they are asking about two things. One is they want you to calculate the fair value gain or loss on debt instrument. That is one. As at March 2019 and write the relevant journal entries to record such gain or loss. So gain or loss relates to a particular financial year. A particular financial year. So during the financial year, what happened? That is what they are asking. During the financial year, what happened is the question. So you need to be very careful for you to calculate a fair value gain or loss. For you to calculate a fair value gain or loss, you need to know how this fair value was faring. Okay, right. So let's look at that. So if you look at the board, let's see. Now they are asking about the fair value gain or loss in 2019. So first thing that we need to find out is what is the fair value of debt instruments as at 31/3/2018. 31/3/2018. So first you have to find out what is the fair value of debt instruments as at 31st March 2018. So what is the fair value means? How you calculate it? You calculate the number of debt instruments, which is 1000, and they have given the fair value to be 100 rupees each for each instrument, right? Now the cost is 150. That is not relevant to us. For the fair value gain or loss to be calculated, you need the fair value of the debt instrument as at the end of last year. So this will give you 100,000. This will give you 100,000. So as at 31st March 2018, it was 100,000. Then we have to calculate fair value of debt instruments as at 31/3/2019. So they say there were no sales or purchases, which means the debenture number of debentures remain as it is, but the price has gone up. The fair value price has gone up to 200 rupees. So which means the fair value as at 31st March 2019 will be also 200,000. 200,000. Is that clear? Are we clear about it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So one debt instrument is worth 100 rupees as at 31st March. So 1000 instruments means I have 100,000. As at 31st March 2019, it is 200 rupees per instrument. So I have 200,000. Now the question is fair value gain, or it could be a loss for the year ended 31st March 2019. So how do you calculate it? Closing balance minus opening balance. So which means 200,000 minus 100,000, which will give you 100. This 100,000 is a gain. Why? The price has gone up. So from 100 rupees, it has gone up to 200, which means that is a profit to us. It's a gain. So it's actually a fair value gain. It's a fair value gain means you have to recognize it in other comprehensive income. Other comprehensive income. Okay. Quickly take down. So the next part of the same question is to draw up the journal entries. Now, before writing the journal entries, this you don't need to write it in the exam, but just make yourself understand. Let's look at the T account. Right? Now, debt instruments. fair value through OCI, right? Debt instruments at fair value through OCI. So first thing that we saw is actually what would have happened if you really look at it. They have bought these 1,000 debentures at the rate of 150 rupees. So we can say when they brought it, they would have debited here 150,000. This is 1,000 debentures at the rate of 150. Can you remember? Right. This is how they would have brought in at cost. But at the end of 31st March 2018, what happened? This value went up to oh sorry, in other words, it went down to 100,000. It went down to 100,000. Can you remember? We did the calculation 31st March 2018. So what does that mean? You purchased it at 150,000. Now the value is 100,000. Which means what has happened? The value has come down. Value has come down means how to balance this account? You need to put 50,000 here. When you put 50,000 here, what is the double entry? There has to be a account called fair value gain stroke loss on debt instruments. So what will happen? You will debit here, sorry, credit here and debit debt instruments at fair value through OCI. So during the year 2018, what would have happened? The company would have incurred a loss of 50,000. This is not relevant to the question, I am just explaining, right? The actual question is what happened in 2019. So in 2018, what would have happened? The company would have incurred a loss of 50,000. Loss of 50,000. So that's why the value has come down to 100,000. So how did you bring it? You credited here and you debited the other comprehensive income to the equity. This 50,000 will go into the FVOCI reserve. Like the revaluation reserve, you will have to create a reserve in the equity, which is called the fair value through OCI or OCI. You can call it as OCI reserve. No problem. You can call it a OCI reserve or fair value reserve. Any name can be given. Now we come to 2019. So 2019, what happened? The price of the debenture went up to 200,000. Price of the debenture went up to 200,000. So now, as at 31st March 2019, the carried forward amount will be 200,000. 200. Now look at how your balancing will happen. This side it is 200,000. This side it is only 100,000. So what you do? You bring in a 100,000 here. Then both sides will become here it will be 150. Okay, balancing figure is this much, but the total is 150 on both sides. Right. Now what happens? Here you have debited. So if you debit here, what will happen? Fair value gain stroke loss will get credited. So this is for 2018 and now we are looking at 2019. You will get 100,000. So this is how it happens. In terms of a T account, if you try to understand, this is how it happens. Why I put up this is just to make yourself understand better. But in examination, you don't require to do this. What we did earlier is more than sufficient. Don't waste your time by doing this. But why I have put up this is just to make yourself understand how do we arrive at the journal entry. How do we arrive at the journal entry? That is what is very important. So you can take down if you want. So, how would be the journal entry? Journal entry would look like this. Debit debt instrument measured at fair value through OCI 100,000 and the credit will go to other comprehensive income. You can write other comprehensive income or fair value gain on loss on debt instrument, whatever. One of the two. Okay, so you have to write the debit and credit, and you can give a narration also to say that fair value gain for the year ended 31st March 2019. Okay, right. Next part, last part. Sorry. If Happy Bank PLC calculates the impairment on loans and advances on collective basis. What do you mean by collective basis? I told you. Impairment can be calculated in two ways. One is the individual impairment, the other one is the collective impairment. So here they are talking about collective impairment. What is the impairment charge for the year ended 31st March 2018? They are talking about 18. Now look at the piece of information given to us. They are asking about to calculate the impairment for the year ended 31st March 2018. So what is the information that is required for you to calculate the collective impairment? I gave you a formula. The last part of the financial instrument is to know how to calculate the collective impairment, because individual impairment is totally different. That I explained. But collective impairment is calculated using complex method, but you can have a simplified formula to understand it. So what was the formula?
Exposure of
ECL
Yes.
equal to EAD, EAD, EAD into PD into LGD.
LGD. Very simple. If you remember this formula, this question is done. So they talk about as at 31st March 2018, the exposure at default is 1 million. If I not mistaken, it is 1 million. Please mute yourselves. After talking to me, you have to mute yourselves. Okay, right. So the PD for 2018 March. 2018 March is 3%. And the LGD for 2018, we are talking about 31st March 2018. It will be 15%. 15%. So they want you to calculate what is the ECL or collective impairment. So you can calculate and put the answer. Okay. So that gives you 20 marks. So I don't see any problem in scoring that 20 marks in this question. Right? So I showed the double entry in the slide. This is the double entry. Okay. Then the last part, collective impairment is EAD into PD into LGD, which is 1 million into 3% into 15%, which gives you 4,500 rupees. So what does it mean? Even though you have 1 million, the provision or the impairment that you have to make on this loan, if it goes into bad or non-performing, is only rupees 4,500. 4,500. Okay, right. So now I want you all to calculate what is the impairment charge. What is the impairment charge for the year ended 2019? Can you all quickly calculate? What is the impairment charge for the year ended 2019? So if you want, I will go back to the piece of information that is available to us. So please calculate the impairment charge for the year ended 2019. Quickly. If you calculated, you can give me the answer. What is the amount of impairment or impairment charge for the year ended 31st March 2019?
600,000.
How much?
600,000.
600,000.
6,000.
6,000. Any other answers?
6,000.
6,000. So we are getting 6,000. Yes. Any other answers? So let's do it on the board. Right. Now this is as at 31st March 2018. So let me put it here. Now my question was not the impairment as at 31st March 2019. I didn't ask for this. What I asked was, what is the impairment charge for the year? For the year. So, for me to understand what is it for the year, what do I do? First, I need to calculate this. So, it is EAD into PD into LGD. EAD has gone up to 1,250. The loan balance has gone up to 1,250. The PD has increased to 4%. But the LGD also has improved to 12%. As a result, my impairment is 6,000 rupees. Your answers were correct. If I had asked what is the impairment as at 31st March 2019? But my question was, what is the impairment charge for the year ended 31st March 2019? So this is actually what will go into the statement of financial position, or in other words, the balance sheet. Now you have 1 million, and at the end of the year you have 4,500 as impairment. So what you will show in the financial statement is 1 million minus 4,500. Okay, just like the property, plant and equipment. If you have a fixed asset, you have the cost and you also have the accumulated depreciation. Now this is like the accumulated depreciation. Please understand. So accumulated depreciation as at 31st March 2018 is 4,500. Accumulated depreciation as at 31st March 2019 is 6,000. So my question is, what is the depreciation charge for the year? When you say what is the depreciation charge for the year means, it is somewhat similar to what is the impairment charge for the year 31st March 2019. So what you need to do? You take the difference between the two cumulatives. That is 6,000 minus 4,500. So which will give you 1,000. Okay, this you need to know. The ECL means it is the number that you calculate as at a particular date. So in other words, which is known as the cumulative impairment. Cumulative impairment. This is the cumulative impairment. This is also the cumulative impairment. So how the impairment charge for the current year is calculated is you take the difference between this year closing balance minus last year closing balance. Okay. So these two numbers, these basically, when you look at 31st March 2018 financial statement, this will be going into your balance sheet or a statement of financial position. Again, 19 when you come, this is going into that. But what I am asking is, what is the number that will go into the P&L of 2019 or statement of comprehensive income? One of the names you can use. What is the impairment charge in the P&L you will have to show, right? That number is 1,500. 1,500. Is that understood? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So you have to remember this. What do you mean by ECL is the cumulative number. What you go into the balance sheet. But what I asked is, what is the P&L impact for the current year, that is 2019. So that will be the difference between the two cumulative. Even in the depreciation also, that is how it is done. Accumulated depreciation is this. But what is the depreciation charge for the year is the difference between the two. The difference between the two. Okay. So I hope this is a comprehensive question on SLFRS 9, which covers the fair valuation as well as the impairment part of it. I don't think the examiner can complicate more than this, right? So this gives you a better understanding of the topic. Right. Let's look at question number 5 of September 2019. Question number 5 of September 2019. Right. Look at the question. The following information has been extracted from the accounting records of Heaven Bank PLC for the financial year ended 31st December 2018. So there is a customer proposal. Like you get some piece of information from a customer's loan extract. So loan type is a mortgage loan, loan amount is 200,000, loan has been granted on 31st December 2017, and the term of the loan is 3 years, annual interest rate is 5%, initial transaction cost is 5,000 rupees, annual equal loan installment is 77,000, effective interest rate is 5%, and annual amortized interest is 11,000, 9,000, and 6,000. So what are the details that you have here, especially in terms of this particular loan, right? So you have the customer name, loan type is given, loan amount is 200,000. When the loan is granted is 31st December 2017, and it is for 3 years. 3 years means the loan will come to an end when? When is the maturity of the loan?
2020.
31st December 2020. Good. Then you also have the interest rate of the loan, and they have also given the effective interest rate of the loan also, because this is a 3-year loan, not a 12 months loan. If it is a 1-year loan, it will be the same. So they have calculated the effective interest rate also. Then also they say annual equal installment is 77,000. Annual equal loan installment is 77,000. So now you have to have an understanding. If it is 77,000 for a year, because they say annual equal installment. If it is 77,000 for a year, how much he will be paying at the end of the 3 years? Can you calculate it? How much? How much is it? For one particular year, he is going to pay 77,000. So how many years he has to pay?
3 years.
So how much is it?
Yes.
231.
31,000.
231,000. But he borrowed only 200,000. How come he is paying 231,000?
Capital with interest.
Capital with interest. So how much is the interest now?
31,000.
31,000. But do you have that 31,000 given?
No.
Where do you get it? I know it is 31,000, but do you get the 31,000 here? Look at what is given at the bottom. Annual amortized interest. So year one means that is for 2018. 2018 he will be paying an interest of 11,000. Am I correct?
Yes.
Then for 2019 he will be paying 9,000. Then 2020, by the end of 2020 he will be paying 6,000. So altogether how much is the interest?
31,000. But according
According to these numbers, what is it?
according to these numbers, 26,000.
26,000.
Yeah, initially transaction cost will be the 5,000. Altogether 31,000.
Right, very good. Now you see there is a catchy point in this question. What is that catchy point? When a customer comes for a loan, we will charge the customer so many things with commission, that commission, this commission, that and this. Right? In real terms, what do we do? When you say initial transaction cost, that is like, I don't know how each bank will term this. You might say handling charges, loan handling charges, because at the time of giving the loan, there has to be a staff member going through the documents. There is a documentation part. So you will call it as handling charges, or maybe some other bank might call it as documentation charges. Or likewise, you will have so many other fee income coming into this. And all those fee income right now, we might be doing it on cash basis, where you will say the customer, look, if you are to give the loan, you have to pay this in upfront. 5,000 has to be paid for this loan. Or you can go for like valuation charges. So many things are there. You will ask all those upfront. But the capital and the interest will be paid later by the customer. But what do we need to understand is, even though something that you collect upfront is actually pertain to this 3-year period. If it is a 5-year loan, it will be for the 5-year period. So actually speaking, this 5,000 rupee initial transaction cost that you pay is also part and parcel of this loan. So what they have done is actually 200,000 capital, 26,000 interest plus 5,000 transaction cost. All added together gives you 231,000 that they have divided by 3. Is that clear to you all?
Yes, sir.
Right. So you see, by reading a question, all these information has to be understood. Otherwise, you won't be able to do the question properly. Right. Let's look at the question now. State the values for A, B, C, D, and E in your answer book to fill the blanks in the following amortization schedule. So what is happening when you give a loan to a customer? There is something called amortization schedule. Every bank will have this in their respective systems. They will have it. What do you mean by this is how a loan will be repaid. When you give a loan, how does this loan will be repaid? That is what we are talking about, amortization schedule. So you look at it, on 31st December 2017, the loan starts with 205,000. What do you mean by that? 200,000 is the capital, 5,000 is what? The transaction cost. So you have to remember, when you create account for a loan under SLFRS 9, the transaction cost is considered as part of your amortized cost. Okay, I didn't want to complicate you all at the beginning itself by bringing in this. That's why we started with principal and interest, if you can recall. But when it comes to real accounting, you will have to add these type of transaction costs also to the instrument. So here we have 205,000 to start with. But later on, look at what is happening. In 2018, you will come across another 11,000. In 2019, you will come across another 9,000. And in 2020, you will come across another 6,000, which will be your amortized interest for the 3 years. And during this period, the customer will pay 77,000 each year for the next 3 years. So by the end of the third year, which is 2020, your loan balance will become zero, provided you pay all 3 installments. Okay. If the customer doesn't pay, it will not be zero. But what we are looking at is the theoretical side of it, not how actually the customer will going about is not relevant. What we are looking at is ideally how it should happen. That is what the amortization schedule is, right? Now look at the table. 205,000 is the opening balance. Then you have an expected cash flow. Expected cash flow means how much the customer should pay. Then you also have the amortized interest. Then you have the closing balance. The closing balance will be the opening balance for the next year. Opening balance for the next year, right? So what you need to understand is how this table works. How this table works. Now in examination, that is very important. So let me take you through quickly. Opening balance, expected cash flow, amortized interest, and the closing balance. So 2017, they say 205,000. This is how it is. Then okay, so this is what it is basically. Hope you all can see the board. So you are starting with 205,000, which is the 200,000 capital plus the 5,000 transaction cost. Expected cash flow means what the customer has to pay, then the interest, then the closing balance. So if you look at the first line, theoretically, there is an opening balance. Expected cash flow is what the customer will pay. Amortized interest is the interest that you are going to charge the customer. So when you look at all three, you will end up the closing balance. So how you do it is, if I am to say this is A, this is B, this is C, basically this will be okay. 205,000 is to be paid. Whatever that the customer pays, you will deduct. Whatever the interest that the customer needs to pay, you will add to the customer. Basically, that is the formula. But unfortunately, this question has a problem where if you apply this formula, what will happen? 205,000 negative means this becomes 0, right? But they have given. So ideally speaking, this shouldn't be there. This shouldn't be there, right? But you don't worry about it because that is not impacting you to do the question. You don't have to worry about it. So go by the principle now. This is A. So you see the closing balance comes in as the opening balance. So this is 205,000. The customer is paying you 77,000. You will charge 11,000. How much is A? Calculate A.
139,000.
139,000.
39,000.
Please calculate and see. I'm not sure. 77. It will be 66. Yeah, I think 139 is correct. 139. Okay. Now, if this is 139, what is the next number that we can easily find out? Which one we can easily find out?
B.
Opening balance for 2019.
That is this. So which is same as A. Right. So what you need to do? Apply the same formula again. This minus this plus this. How much?
71,000.
70?
1,000.
No, it can't be. Ah, yes.
So 71,000.
71,000, correct. 71,000. Yes. 77,9. Yes. 69. Okay. So now when you know C, which means you know D, which is again 71,000. So theoretically, this minus this plus this will give you 0. If you are to get 0, what is the number that you need to put here?
77,000.
77,000. This is like simple mathematics. 71 plus 6, 77. So obviously you have to put 77 because this is going to get deducted. Even if without knowing that, you know there will be 3 annual installment. Do you know? There will be 3 annual installment of 77,000. So obviously, even without knowing this, you know that this is 77,000. The first number that you can easily find out is actually this one, without even going to this, right? So the first number, if you look at this question, the first number that you can easily find out is this, because that is already given. So if you know this, this is minus, this is plus. So to get 0, what you need to do? You should have 71 here. If this is 71, this will be 71. If this is 71, You well calculate. You see? So, in order to do this question, you don't need to know SLFRS 9 or impairment or amortized cost, nothing is required. What you need to know is this basic formula. What is it? How much the customer should pay, how much he is agreeing to pay, how much of interest I am going to charge. That is the basic formula. You see? That understanding is very important. Did you all understand that?
Yes.
Sir,
Okay. So in examination, one of the biggest mistakes that the candidates do, they go and rewrite this table in their answer book. Wasting time. No, you don't need to do it. What you have to do is put A, B, C, D, E and give your answers. How did you calculate A? A was calculated 205 minus 77 plus 11. You get 139. What is B? You can easily say same as A. What is C? Again you do the formula. 139 minus 77 plus 9. Because by drawing this table you will waste time. Secondly, even if you draw the table, still the workings for these you have to show. So instead of that, we don't have to do anything. Just write down the letters and straight away show the answers with the workings. That is what is expected. Okay. So let me show you how you can do it. You can do it like the answers, of course, it will be like this, but you have to show the workings. Okay. Right. And the second part, they are asking, write the double entries to record the amortized interest of Mr. Happy for the year ended 31/12/2019. So what is 2019 year ended interest? It is 9,000 rupees. So for this 9,000 rupees, what is the double entry? You will debit the loan account of the customer and credit amortized interest income account. Amortized interest income account. So amortized interest income account is your P&L. Is your P&L. Please make a note. Is your P&L. Then the next part. Prepare the loan ledger account of Mr. Happy to record the transaction between 17 to 2018. So what you need to do is actually, you need to take all the transactions that you saw in the table into a T account. When you say ledger account, it will be the T account. So how you do it is, this is how you do it. Okay. You need to start from the beginning and write everything. Okay. Initially there will be 200,000 debited to the customer and you will credit cash. Again, there will be 5,000 you will debit and it is like the cash going out. Then what was the closing balance on 2017, which was 205,000 as per your table. Then during the year, what happens? The customer will pay you 77,000. You see? Likewise, you have to show all the transactions. But what they are asking is only for one particular year. Don't go and write all the ledger entries. Okay? Remember, they are asking you to write only between 2017 and 2018. That is only for one particular year. Right. So that is all about September 2019. Okay. Now let's look at September 2017. I want you to do this quickly. With the understanding that you had now, I would like you all to fill this table quickly. It's the same thing. What we did short while ago. So what do they say? Uranus Bank PLC granted a loan of 100,000 to a customer named Budget Importers Limited on 31/12/2016. Maturity period of the loan is for 3 years, same as the previous one. And the annual interest rate is 11%. Loan is required to be settled on maturity. Loan is required to be settled on maturity. Please note that in one installment of rupees 136,000, which includes the applicable interest, that is at 11% they have calculated. Amortized interest for 2017, 18, 19 would be 11,000, 12,000 and 13,000 respectively. So they are asking you to fill in the blanks. They are asking you to fill in the blanks. Right. So this is how it will look like. Again, it's the same thing, but as I told you, it's not applicable because it doesn't work. 100,000 minus 100,000 means this has to be 0, so it doesn't work. So forget about it and let's work on the remaining. So what you have to remember is here there is no transaction cost, so we don't have to worry. What they say is this is a loan where it will be paid in one installment. It will be paid in one installment. Right? Paid in one installment. And they say the amortized interest for the 3 years, amortized interest for the 3 years is 11,000, 12,000 and 13,000 respectively. So what do you mean by that? For 17 it will be 11,000, for 18 it will be 12,000 and for 19 it will be 13,000. So the principle is same. Opening balance will become closing balance will become the opening balance likewise. So expected cash flow you have to put, amortized interest you have to put, and by the end of the 3rd year, you know this has to be 0. Okay, so I have filled the first blank. I have filled the first blank. I know that it is 0. Right? What else I know? What else I know? Straightforward. Yes? Any other numbers that I know? They talk about annual interest being 11,000, 12,000 and 13,000. So very straightforward. 11,000, 12,000, 13,000. Okay. That is also known. Then they also talk about how this loan will be settled. How is it going to be settled? How is it going to be settled?
First installment to pay with
How much? How much is the installment? He is not going to pay annually. So in 17 he will not make a payment. In 18 also he will not make a payment. But in 2019 he is going to pay how much? 136,000. Am I correct?
Yes.
Read the question. Read the question. From the question only I am getting it. I am not getting it from somewhere else. I wanted you all to have the papers. Read the question. Loan is required to be settled on maturity in one installment of rupees 136,000. So they clearly say the customer does not need to pay monthly or annually for this. He can just come at the last and pay this 136,000. So now it's everything is done. If this is 100,000, this is 100,000. Since there is 0, 100 plus 11. If this is 111, so this is a very straightforward question. Very straightforward question. But what you can do is actually here, since majority of the numbers are just straightforward, you may have to draw this table in the answer book. You may have to draw the table in the answer book and give your answer. Okay. So you have to make your judgment how I will handle this question. Whether I need to draw this or whether I can make use of. Now in the earlier question, they already have named the blanks as A, B, C, D, E or whatever. So you can straight away go into using those letters, you can do the workings and give the answer. But here, you don't have that option because everything is blank here. So you have to go with having this table copied into your answer book and then fill in the blanks. So for that you get 5 marks. Hope it is clear.
yes, sir.
Let's get back to the
Yes, sir.
question. Right. Okay. Second part of the question. Based on the assumption that Budget Importers Limited will be bankrupt. Now, did you all go and read the indicators that I gave you last week? Under significant increase in credit risk, I gave you some indicators. Did you all go through those? In that, there was one indicator where the customer can go bankrupt. Bankrupt means there is no balance in the bank. The customer is almost crashed. No business, nothing doing. So this customer is expected, that is, they are making an assumption that Budget Importers Limited will be bankrupt on 31st December 2018. So what is 2018? Before the maturity of the loan, right? You have to remember. That is before the maturity of the loan. Leaving only rupees 50,000 cash security for Uranus Bank PLC. Now, they are saying that this customer is going to assume that the customer is going to bankrupt as at end of 31st December 2018. Now go back to the table and see what was the customer's balance as at 31st December 2018. How much is it?
123,000.
123,000. So, if the customer goes bankrupt at this point, 123,000, what will happen to the bank is the question. So, there they say that bank has 50,000 rupees cash as security. So, what happens? The bank has had a deposit of 50,000 rupees of this customer as a security. Security means collateral. So now they are asking, what is the impairment charge for budget importers on 31st December 2018? So it's very clear. The customer is supposed to pay 123,000. If the customer is bankrupt on that day, we will have 50,000 as collateral. So obviously, the impairment charge will be 123,000 minus 50,000, which will be 73,000 of impairment. Now my question to you is, what kind of an impairment this is?
Loss.
Yeah, impairment loss. What I'm asking is, what type of impairment? Now impairment types we learned, no? What type of impairment it is? Yes. Now we did a question previously. PD, LGD, EAD.
Collective impairment charge.
That was collective impairment charge. Now what are we doing here? We are trying to understand one particular customer, budget importers. So for budget importers, we are trying to analyze and calculate the impairment.
Individual
impairment. So do you understand the difference between the two types of impairment? Here there is a understood, very clearly identified customer, budget importers. And we are looking at their collateral. Collateral means what have they given as security to us, right? So I told you a comparison between the amortized cost and the present value of future cash flows. This is this. The amortized cost is 123,000. Present value of the future cash flow is only 50,000. As a result, there is an impairment of 73,000. Okay. Collective impairment is where you make use of EAD, PD, and LGD. But here you are looking at the customer's collateral. Okay. Right. We'll go to the next part. State two mechanisms used by the banking institutions to ensure the accuracy of impairment calculations and the models used. So here they are asking, now I told you that the banks will be using complex models to do calculations and so on. So how can you ensure that these are accurate? What can you do for it? How can you ensure that these are accurate? What are the options available to you? So few of the options is, I don't know, every bank will have this. One is where you will have to give these calculations to an independent party for them to verify. So what you can do is you will have an internal audit department in your respective banks. You will have to request them to go through your calculations. That is one way of ensuring accuracy. Because you will do the calculations and you will give it to a third person for them to go through. So they will go through and identify if there are any errors. Secondly, like the internal audit, there will be a validation done by the external auditors also. Every year when they do the audit, they will also go through. So that is also another option where you can ensure the accuracy of your calculation. Okay, so that is what they are asking. So the options available are these. Validate the models used for impairment calculations, validate the mechanisms used in the computations, backtesting of calculations, obtain an independent assurance from internal audit. That is what I told you. Then review the observations made by external auditors. External auditors is who will be handling your bank's audit. Okay, these are the options available to you. And the last part, effective from 1/1/2018, because now this paper came in 2017, you see. So by that time, SLFRS 9 has not come. By that time, SLFRS is not yet come. So they are asking a question, effective from 1/1/2018, SLFRS 9 financial instruments will be applicable for accounting for financial instruments. State two differences between LKS 39 and SLFRS 9. So I told you, the second slide that we had was on this, the differences between 39 and 19. Of course, now it won't be very much applicable, but just for your knowledge, these are the differences, right? So financial assets under SLFRS 9 are categorized under two. One is fair value, the other one is amortized cost. But earlier we had about 4 categories. Okay. Now the SLFRS 9 instruments are categorized based on 2 important criteria. One is business model, the other one is cash flow characteristic. But earlier it was not the case. Thirdly, impairment calculated using expected credit loss model, ECL, expected credit loss. But under previous LKS 39, I told you it is based on incurred loss model, incurred loss model. Okay. So this is when it came in 2017, right? So there are more questions, but it might not be applicable because those are under LKS 39. So we will not go through them. Okay. Right. Now we have only limited time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with question number 1 of September 2019. Okay. And I will just give you the introductory. We will continue doing it when we meet once again after the break, right? So it's good that we are taking a break, because once in a way you will have to complete all your revision within these 2 weeks. Please ensure, because now even now when I ask questions, some of you only 1 or 2 answers, but rest is keeping quiet. I don't know whether you don't want to answer or you don't know. But even when I ask certain questions, you didn't answer those because you haven't done your revision work. So please make use of these 2 weeks productively to do your revision work, right? Okay. Let's go to September 2019, question number 1. Okay. Now you know this is a compulsory question. Do you know that?
Yes, sir.
So if it is a compulsory question, do you need to do it? What do you think? So it, actually speaking, it is not necessary. Okay? Because what happens, you have to do altogether 5 questions. If you are in a position to score your required marks using those 4 questions, which will give you totally in 80 marks, but out of that 80 marks, you will have to score the required marks to pass it. So then this question will not be required. Okay. But having said that, it is good for you to look at this question also from an exam perspective and try to do something without just leaving that and coming. So I would urge you all to make an attempt to do this question, provided you allocate adequate time for this question, right? When we do this question, you will understand it might really take 30 minutes to 45 minutes if you are very thorough in the subject matter to do it. Okay. In exams, with the exam pressure and everything, you might end up taking even 1.5 hours. The total paper itself is only 3 hours and 15 minutes. So you need to allocate adequate time for you to do this question, right? That is number one. Then the second part is, if you are confident in doing this question, you can start with this question and do it. But I would suggest that it is better for you to do this question last. Have this question to be done at the last and try to finish off the other 4 questions, leaving out about 1 hour for this question. Okay, leaving out 1 hour for this question, because it will definitely take 1 hour. You can just do and see. It will take that time. Now, when you look at the question number 1, the first thing that you need to do is not to read through this question. Go to the bottom and see what is required. What is required? So what is the requirement? They want you to do 4 things. One is prepare the trial balance as at 31/12/2018 after adjustments or corrections of A to D above. Now only you go and see what is A to D. This is what A to D is. So they say following adjustments, corrections are required to be recorded when preparing financial statements of Perfect Bank PLC. So they want you to adjust these into the financial statements. Now, if you look at, there are 5 adjustments, A to E, but what they require is only A to D. Please note that also. Then they want you to prepare the statement of comprehensive income, statement of financial position, and statement of changes in equity. Statement of changes in equity. So basically, there are 4 parts, and each part will not have the equal marks. This is the only place where you don't get equal marks for the 4 parts. In rest of the paper questions, you get 4 parts and each will have 5 marks. But here it will depend. Depending on the type of question, it will say allocated how many marks. So trial balance, you are giving 5 marks. Comprehensive income statement, that is your P&L, 6 marks. Financial position, 7 marks. And the equity statement, only 2 marks. Okay, 2 marks. So where do you start with this question? Where do you start with this question? That is what is very, very important. So generally in exam questions, you are given a trial balance. So you go and see, this is the trial balance. List of account balances they say. But actually it is not the trial balance. Why? We know how a trial balance will look like. A trial balance will have a company name, then it will say trial balance as at which date. Then you will have a description column, you will have a debit and credit, and the debit total should agree with the credit total. All these are there. So as a result, this is not the trial balance. This is list of account balances. That is why they are giving you this question. Trial balance as at 31/12/2018 for you to prepare. for you to prepare. You have to prepare it. But in order to prepare it, you need to incorporate all the adjustments as well. You need to incorporate the adjustments as well, right? Okay. Right. Now, what would you do when you are required to do a trial balance? First thing is you need to identify from the list of account balances, what are my assets? What are my liabilities? What are my equity items? What are my income? And what are my expenses? Okay. So I would like you all to now go through this paper, those who are having the papers, and mark on the left side, or if you are doing it on the exercise book, just don't write the names in full. Just mark these items. There are about 20 odd items. And on the left side, you just say whether it is asset, liability, expense, income, or whatever. I want you all to mark it. Whether it is asset, liability, income, expense, or equity. Quickly. Since now we have learned SLFRS 9 also, now the terminologies are much more familiar to you. That's why I didn't want to start with this initially, because majority of the terms will be from the SLFRS 9. So now it is known to you. So therefore now you can identify what are the assets, what are the liabilities, what are income, what are expense, and what are the equity components. So what you can do is you can just mark. If you think it is assets, put A. If it is income, put I. Likewise, you can use a short form to mark these. Why I am doing this is because in examination also, if you try to adopt that approach, you will not go wrong. Okay. Some candidates, what they do, they start writing. Then once they start writing, they are not in a position to understand whether it is asset, liability, or whether I should put. So beforehand, if you identify the list properly, then it is easy for you to classify them and identify the type of balance also. Okay, so quickly start doing it. Are we done? Shall we go through it? Okay, we'll start with the first one. Financial assets at amortized cost, net of impairment. So what do you mean by that? I showed you earlier. In that particular question when we did, I told you 1 million was the loan, 4,500 was the impairment. So when you say financial assets at amortized cost means it is net of impairment, means that 1 million minus 4,500 is this number. Okay. So when you say financial assets at amortized cost, you have to remember when it is, if it is net of impairment means there is a cost, that is the amortized cost minus the accumulated impairment is also included. Right. So basically that is assets. They say financial assets means it's an asset. Second one, amortized interest income on financial assets. So that is a income. Impairment charges on financial assets. What is that? That is a expense. This is, in other words, the P&L charge. P&L charge. Can you remember? We did 4,500 and then 6,000. We said the difference 1,005 was the impairment charge. Like that, 4,000 is the impairment charge. So that is an expense. That is an expense. Next one, financial assets recognized through profit or loss. What is that? That's an asset. Out of the three categories, this is one of them. FVTPL. Can you remember? Fair value through profit or loss. Financial assets were categorized into three. Amortized cost, fair value through P&L, fair value through OCI. Okay. So that is again an asset. Dividend income, it's an income. Financial liabilities at amortized cost, it's a liability. Amortized interest expense. Now they are talking about interest expense. So it is obviously an expense. Fee and commission income, that's an income. Fee and commission expense, it's an expense. Then operating and other expenses, obviously it is an expense. Income tax expense, so that is like P&L payments, tax expenses. Miscellaneous payments, that is also expense. Cash and cash equivalent, that's an asset. Balances with central bank, again an asset. Property, plant and equipment is an asset. Financial liabilities recognized through profit or loss is a liability. Other assets is assets. Other liabilities is liability. Stated capital is capital, or in other words, equity. Dividend payment, that's a reduction in reserves. So we can treat it as a negative reserve, or in other words, a reduction in equity, right? A debit to a equity. Then statutory reserve fund is equity. Retained profit also is equity. Now, why I wanted you all to, sorry, was there a question? Now, why I wanted you all to put down those is, right, as homework, you are going to do a trial balance, which is not actually asked in the question, by taking these balances without looking at the adjustments. The adjustments we will do it next week, that is when we recommence. But as of now, based on this list of account balances, you see whether you can put up the trial balance. So I wanted you all to identify whether it is asset, liability, income, expense, or equity. So why I wanted you all to do it is, now they have given a list of account balances. It doesn't say whether it is debit or credit. But we know, looking at this classification, assets are debit, liabilities are credit, income are credit, expenses are debit, and equities are credit, except for dividend. Dividend will be a debit. Okay. So based on that, now you know when you list down the items, if you have marked any item as asset, you will put it on the amount in the debit column. If you have marked any item as liability, you will put the amount in the credit column. So likewise, when you put the debits and credits, the totals should agree. Okay. So that is the homework for you all to do at home within the next 2 weeks. Along with your revision, I want you all to do that trial balance. So please try to complete that trial balance before when we meet. We can go through it before we start with the question. Okay, right. So we are almost past 10 o'clock. Let's meet up on 24th at 1 o'clock. Please remember. And wishing you all a happy New Year and a happy weekend. Meet you all once again on 24th of this month. Thank you.